Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Style by Tay. If this is the first time you're coming across my channel, thank you so much. Do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so when I post new videos, you get notified and be the first to see it. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to cut and sew this A-line shaped cowl neck dress. It has an open back with a slit in front, which I used for my engagement last month. So if this is something you're interested in, you definitely want to stick around, and let's get right into the video. So as you can see here, I've gone ahead to rule out my body measurements from the shoulder all the way to the full length. Now I'm going to be marking my body measurements divided by 4. So on the chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurements divided by 4. And on the hip line and waistline as well, I'm going to mark the round measurement divided by 4. On the shoulder line as well, I'm going to come inwards by 2 inches, just as you can see me do. And in between the chest and the bust line, just as you can see, I'm going to mark the midpoint. What I have from my chest to my bust line is 1 inch, which means that the midpoint is going to be 0.5 inch. So I'm going to connect that mark to the 2 inches on the shoulder line, and we're going to get our halter neck and then just create a new armhole, just as you can see. So just watch carefully and follow through. The next thing I'm going to do is to draw out the back neck depth. Initially, when I was doing the basic bodies, I came down by 1 inch. So from that neck curve that I drew earlier, I'm going to come down by 1 inch again. On this video, you might be saying 1.5, but later on I reduced it because it was too wide for me. I wanted it smaller, so you might as well just take the correction now and come down by 1 inch instead of 1.5. And then that 1 inch that you just marked, you're going to connect it to the 2 inches that you came inward with on the shoulder line, just as you can see me do, and then proceed to draw out the neck curve. So for the halter neck that we drew earlier, I felt like I went in too deep with the curve, so I'm just using my ruler to reduce it a bit. There is no measurement, I'm just trying to reduce so that my bust will not be visible on the side. So while you're drafting yours, you might be comfortable with going in that deep, but if you're not, just make sure that when you're drawing out the halter neck, connecting the 2 inches points to the midpoints between your chest and bust line, your curve shouldn't be so curvy, shouldn't be so deep. So that's just the correction that I'm doing here. Next, I'm going to rule a line on the marked body measurements, the round body measurements divided by 4 that I had marked earlier on each line. So connecting the bust to the waist and then to the hip. Now for the full length, we're going to mark the hip measurement divided by 4, and we'll be adding 5 extra inches. So for me, my hip measurement divided by 4 is 9.75, and I'm going to be adding 5 inches to that. And then I'm going to rule a line from that point to meet the hip line. After that is done, on the full length, I'm going to go up by 1 inch and create a curve back into the line, just so that by the time we're done making the dress, there are no pointy edges and it just relaxes well. Now we're going to determine how low we want the back to be, and for me, I'm going to be using the under bust line. That is how low I want mine to be, and I'm just going to go ahead to connect it to the armhole area. So remember the new armhole that we created? I'm just going to use my curve ruler to connect it. So just watch closely and follow the process. After that is done, I'm just going to label that the back opening, since we're drafting both the front and the back on the same pattern, so you don't get confused. Now I'm going to go ahead to cut out the pattern, so watch closely. Remember, we drafted both the front and the back on the same paper. The next thing I went ahead to do was to trace out the neck strap on another fresh piece of pattern paper. So I placed this one that we just cut out on a different plain pattern paper, and then I used my tracing wheel to trace it out, and then just used my pen to highlight it so it's more visible. So this is what you should have by the time you're done doing that. I'm just going to go ahead to label this, the center back and the side back, just so I know where is for where. So I'm going to go ahead to cut this out, but we're not cutting the neck strap on the main pattern. We're just cutting out the one that we had traced out. After that is done, the next thing I'm going to do is to cut through the chest line, but I'm not going to be cutting all the way to the end of the paper. I'm going to be leaving 1 inch or 0.5 inch away from the end of the paper. So this is what is going to help us create the cowl neck effect, as you can see right now. So we're going to move on to transfer this to our fabric. So guys, this is the fabric I'll be working with for this tutorial. As you could already see on the thumbnail, it's a non-stretchy fabric, and I'll advise you use one as such. As you can see, I have my fabric on fold, and I've gone ahead to pin the pattern paper on it. So I'm just opening up the chest area which we had slashed earlier, so I can measure out what I want for the cowl neck. So if you want the cowl neck to be deeper, you can adjust that from this point. So for me, I'm going to be using 7 inches, just as you could see, and I'll go ahead to pin the upper part to the fabric. The next thing I'm going to do now is to pin the neck strap to this fabric. Remember that this is the back neck strap. This is what we're going to couple up behind our neck to keep the dress in place. So I'm going to place it the way you can see here. My fabric did not seam enough, so I'm going to refold this enough to have more space for this. As you can see, I've gone ahead to spread out my fabric enough to fit my pattern paper. The next thing I'm doing now is just take your ruler, because we're going to be cutting the interfacing alongside the main fabric for the front. So just the way you see I have placed my ruler, do same, and then fold in the excess paper just as you can see me do. So we're trying to create a straight, more like slanted line. So I'm just ruling a line from the center front back to meet the original neckline on my pattern paper. Then I'm going to go ahead to add 1/2 inch to the rest of the pattern paper that we have here at top. So this next strap, I'm going to add 1/2 inch all round down till I get to the armhole, and then for the sides, I'm going to be using 1 inch sewing allowance. So I'm going to impute all of that before we go ahead to cut out. So after cutting the front piece, we're going to manipulate this pattern to enable us cut the back. Remember, we already marked and drew out a line on where we want the back opening to start. So I'm just going to take that out of the pattern paper. And as you can see, my fabric is on fold. I'm going to go ahead to cut. On the upper part, I'm going to leave 1/2 inch, and on the side, I'm going to leave 1 inch, just as we did for the front. So now that I'm done cutting out the back piece, remember that the front had a slit. I'm going to work on that before moving on to sewing. Still having my fabric folded into two, from the center front, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2. So mine is 3.5. I already made a notch on that point. For my slit, I decided to use 25 inches as the length of my slit, which I just marked here, as you can see. So I'm going to lift the fabric. We're not going to cut together. You're going to cut one part of it. If you cut together, you're going to have 2 slits. So you're going to lift one up and just cut through up until the 25 inches, and that is all for the slit. Now for the sewing, we're going to start with the front piece, and as you can see, I already weaved all around my fabric. So for the attached neck strap for the front piece, I'm going to fold that into 2, just as you can see. And after folding that into 2, I'm going to fold half an inch inwards again, just as you can see, and then use my pin to hold it down. And then when I head over to the machine, I'm going to sew both sides just as I've pointed with half of an inch. So I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side for you to see, and then I'll head over to my machine to stitch them down. After that is done, we're going to turn this to the right side. You have to trim out the excesses to avoid it being bulky by the time you turn, and this is what you should have afterwards. Now for the armhole area, I have this piece of fabric that I went ahead to trace out following the armhole of this fabric, and that is what I'm going to use to turn the rough edges inside. So as you can see, I'm just using my pin to hold it down because this fabric is very light. I have to be super careful. So pin the fabric you're going to use to turn the armhole area all the way to the neck strap, and then head over to the machine and stitch this down with half of an inch. Turn it over and then give it a good press. Do same for both sides. That's what I'm going to do, and I'll come back to show you the next step. This is what the armhole area looks like after I was done sewing, and I also ironed both sides. Now we're going to move on to the slit. So for the slit area as well, we're going to cut out a piece of fabric that we're also going to use to turn this, just similar to what we did for the armhole area. So this is a piece of fabric that I'm going to use. I'm going to trace it out following exactly what I have here on the slit area, and then head over to my machine and also stitch it round using half an inch. And be sure to notch this by the time you're done sewing, especially the midpoint, so everything relaxes, and then flip it to the other side. Give this a good press and use your hemming gum to keep the fabric you used to turn this in place. So this is what the slit looks like after I was done stitching and ironing. Now let's keep this aside and move on to the back piece. Now for the back piece, I have this fabric that I cut out to use to turn the upper part of the back piece. I'm going to do that and come back to show you what next to do. Now that that is done, we're going to join the front and the back piece together. While doing that, as you can see, I finished up the hem of the dress, so do not forget to do that. You can either use a hemming gum or you sew it around and then close up the sides using the allowance that was kept. So I kept 1 inch allowance. That's what I'm going to use to close up both sides. Go ahead to do that, and that's basically all for the making of this dress. Once you're done with all of this, do not forget to attach a button on the neck strap. And this brings us to the end of the making of this dress. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, do well to leave them in the comment section, and I'll be more than happy to respond to them. Please do not also forget to like, share, subscribe, and do leave me a comment. Please do well to engage on this video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.